Welcome to Pesto Comix Audio Edition. This is the post for April 1st, 2024. A Fool and His Expo Pass, aka The Plan and the Pivot. Sometimes the choice is made for you. Originally, this post is supposed to be about my weekend at Toronto Comic Con. I didn't get a table this time around, as I've covered in the past, so I was treating this year as my last hurrah as a fan at the event. Then I lost my pass, and I didn't want to pay for a new one. I took it in stride, but I needed to find a new topic for this week's newsletter. Being forced to pivot also provided a great segue for this week's topic. There will be times where Plan A fails you, and you have to switch to Plan B, or C, or Z. It's not admitting failure. It's finding a new path to success. This kind of thing happens often, actually. It's not always a big change, but anything worth doing is going to throw challenges your way. That said, I haven't missed a newsletter post yet. With all that in mind, let's look at what I had planned and what the pivot was in each of these scenarios, starting with a big one, my career. The original plan. Those who have been reading this newsletter for a while, or know me personally, know that Pesto Comix in itself was a pivot. The plan. Become a successful screenwriter in Hollywood, or at least Canada. My goal was clear. I was going to be a screenwriter and make my bread writing films and television. To me, it was the more likely and fruitful career than comics would ever be. I've read too many stories about creators just scraping by or getting pinned into bad deals, and that scared me from even dipping my toe in. You'd think I'd be worried about the same thing in the film industry, but I wasn't getting that feeling around Toronto in the mid-aughts. This was back when getting DVDs by mail was still novel, so the boom times were just starting. There was going to be a bunch of new jobs in film and television. I just had to ride the wave, or at least that's what I was sold. I did what I was supposed to. I went to the Toronto Film School, and I made short films with friends, one of which actually has something cool of his own going on with Dyson Development. I wrote scripts while surrounded by old-school projectors at the local Famous Players, which then became the Cineplex Gateway Cinemas. I went to a screenwriters conference in LA, and then I was still so green that when they were using Raiders as an example of plot structure, when I was called upon, I answered that it was before my time. I toiled away as an unpaid intern for 2 years covering hockey and the local news, and I met another pal there, actually, who has an awesome book and a great podcast. And then I did even more unpaid interning, building cheese boards at an editing company. Didn't get much valuable experience there. This was all before I was thrown into an IT job installing PCs in remote workers' homes. That led to the next job, which led to the next, and now it's over 20 years later. It pays the bills, and I'm happy for not having to worry about that. It wasn't the original plan, but it helped me fund this endeavor with Pesto Comix. It couldn't have happened without it. Crowdfunding is very misleading. To be successful, you have to have something to show for it. Unless you're going to do it all yourself, and kudos to those that do, you're going to have to put some of your own hard-earned cash to make it happen. That doesn't happen if you're simply a starving artist. The pivot. Take my earnings from my tea, pay some way too talented to be working with me artists to draw my comics to crowdfund. Not every curveball that's thrown your way is this big. Sometimes it's just a project that turns into something new while you're developing it. The original next project. One thing I knew for sure after the Sequential Comics nominated Best Comic Stay Cool is that I wanted to work with Raphael Christiani again. I love how that book turned out so much. I knew the project had to be even bigger, and I had just the idea for it. The plan. Take the already written project, FPU, and hand it off to Raphael to make it happen. I had a 5-part series called FPU in mind for a long time. Long before I had met Raphael or launched Pesto Comix. I actually pitched it to Raphael, and he was interested enough. But as I was polishing the script, I felt like I could serve him and his style a lot better, rather than trying to shoehorn in an idea that doesn't take advantage of his abilities. NKW. This is how NKW came to be, and don't worry, I'll share that full name soon enough. The concept sells itself, but it deserves more than a line in the middle of an already long post. I'll keep it close to the vest for now, but let me tell you, it's going to be big. It's a pun you'll appreciate more when I share the details. It's already underway, actually. In fact, Raphael's already delivered a couple pages. Once Crazy Latte thing is rolling, we'll start pushing this one. It doesn't seem like much, but this was a big move. I stepped back from something that was ready to go as far as writing it was concerned, and I pivoted to something custom made with Raphael in mind. Doing so uncovered a couple built-in advantages that I didn't plan for ahead of time. It's a 5-parter, much like the temporarily shelved FPU, but each issue can stand on its own. FPU is much more serialized and needs to be ready for a rapid release schedule. The pivot. Write something that Raphael will be excited to draw and absolutely kill it with. And for a hint, you should look up his portfolio. NKW, with Raphael drawing the whole thing immediately after he finished Stay Cool, is much more suited to crowdfunding and the longer timelines, especially as we work to grow the audience. It's not just the next one. I've run into some kind of challenge with every project in our slate. I'd like to share some of those with you now, while giving you a small preview of what's in the works. Working Afterlife. I originally called this project Working Stiff, a title which I liked quite a bit. It turns out a lot of comics like that title too. They all had a similar concept to this one, but none seemed to go the same way that I had, so I'm still going through with it. As far as the title goes, it actually had worse SEO than Stay Cool, to my surprise, even though I still get Google alerts for how to stay cool this summer. That's not the big pivot here, though. The plan. Draw daily strips of Working Afterlife in time to launch after Crazy Latte Thing Called Love to help grow the audience for Pesto Comix. I'm not a great artist like the ones I've worked with. It takes me a really long time to draw something different, and that's not something you could do when you're trying to put out a weekly strip. So I've decided to wait on this one until I've drawn it all. I want to keep the high quality you've seen on other projects, and I can't do that if I'm trying to hit deadlines for something that's not my primary discipline. The pivot. Focus on projects that'll grow the audience and allow us to continue putting out content regularly. In other words, focus on writing and draw slowly. Cleo and Gus and MJ. I put Cleo and Gus and the not previously announced MJ together as they're two sides of the same coin. The plan. Since I'm now an expert cartoonist after pumping out weekly strips of Working Afterlife, write and draw daily strips of Cleo and Gus and MJ. Both were originally planned as comic strips to be drawn by me, like Working Afterlife. Not just the strips, though. Daily strips that you would find in a newspaper. That was the goal, actually, to pitch them to King and Andrews McMeel. I have a year's worth of each scripted and ready to go. As I tinkered with them, though, I quickly found out that they work much better having a page or two to breathe on, and not just those 3 or 4 panels. Think more Spy vs. Spy over Garfield. The pivot. Expand to page-long gags and use the winning formula of getting a talented artist to make it happen. Both are in different stages right now, with Cleo and Gus already being pitched to potential collaborators who are very well suited to this kind of storytelling, while I keep MJ a little closer to the vest. If it all goes as planned, we'll have more news about both those projects this summer. FPU. This is a project I've been ready to get going since 2018, well before Pesto Comix was real. The plan. Having a clear process after a handful of successful Kickstarter campaigns, launch the FPU series. The false starts on this have been for the best. It's allowed me to take everything I've learned over the past 6 years and apply it to improve the series greatly. Having a number of other projects that will be releasing at the same time should make it easier to get FPU ready for a rapid release in the meantime. Waiting too long between releases for a story that's serialized as this one is could hurt it more than it can help, so patience is really a virtue here. The pivot. Plan. Really plan. Make it so I can get it out as quickly as possible to make it successful, both financially and storytelling-wise. BSP. I stand by the decisions I've made. Comics are where I want to be, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. The plan. Steer 100% into comics. Leave the rest behind. But it doesn't mean I'm not looking to expand my horizons a bit. You may have seen me posting about my Writer's Digest short story finalist, Chop Chop Chop, and thanks for voting for it if you did. You may have found my stories on Writing Battles if you frequent that site, or elsewhere. I get the itch to write while artists I work with have time to do their thing. I can write faster than they can draw, and they can draw faster than my bankroll can pay them to draw what I've written while I wait for them. It's a dilemma. I've had lots of stories to tell, and not all of them fit well in the medium of comics, though I have a ton of comics stories waiting for their turn. So what do I do with these idle hands? The pivot. Don't limit yourself to one medium, and bring others to the party. Not just write, but get projects together entirely, working with other great creators of all stripes. I'll have more to share about BSP very, very soon. If you're a fan of my writing, this will be right up your alley. It's inspiring to jump into something a little different. A short, long journey ahead. It's only been 2 years since my headfirst dive into crowdfunding with Pesto Comix. As you can see, I've run into my share of challenges. To pivot as a creator is to be a creator. It's not a failure. It's a different path on the journey to success. You should embrace it. I hope this slate of projects excites you as much as it does me. From this post onward, you'll be able to find a breakdown of all the projects in a handy table at the bottom of the Substack post. I'll be updating it every entry, so make sure to keep an eye on it. And let me know if anything sounds exciting to you. Leave a comment on the Substack post. I have one more plan and pivot to share before we call it. The plan. Work sequentially. Plan. Produce. Launch. Fulfill. Start again. My goal is to make sure that the gap you found between Crazy Latte Thing Called Love and Stay Cool will be the longest between projects going forward. It's killing me not to have something substantial to share these past few months. No more. The pivot. Don't waste time. While producing one, plan the next. When launching one, have another in production and plan another. Keep it rolling. You won't be going hungry here. I'll be giving you my all as long as you'll let me. And I thank you for it. I'll be forever grateful. And until next time. What's next? April 15th. A personal story. Il Pescatore. My entry in The City We Chose by TO Comix. And May 1st. In Through the Side Door. How I found myself at somewhere after being something. Once again, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. If you can visit the Substack, give it a like, give it a comment, that would be great too. Otherwise, I thank you so much. We'll be talking soon. I'll talk to you in a couple weeks on the 15th. Have a great one. Thanks.